they can hold me accountable to something, and I have to, as a leader, have to be willing to allow that to happen if I'm going to really have real relationships with them. So I'm holding them accountable every day. And if I come in and I'm in a bad mood and I'm taking that out on the team, they're allowed to come up to me and say, "Coach, man, you need to check yourself." And they've done that plenty of times.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the head men's basketball coach at Abilene Christian University, Brette Tanner. Coach Tanner was promoted to the head coaching position after 8 seasons with the Wildcats, first as an assistant and the last 6 seasons as the associate head coach. He was key in leading the Wildcats to 3 straight 20-win seasons in back-to-back NCAA postseason appearances and their first-round upset of Texas in the 2021 NCAA tournament. Prior to ACU, he was a top assistant at SFA, where he helped the program to 3 regular season Southland championships and 3 title game appearances from 2006 to 2013. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
I just want to thank you so much for giving up your time and coming on Talking Hoops with me. This is an honor for me.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it, man. I'm really happy to do it, and I wish my Zoom was all set up better, but we'll work through it.
Yeah, no, I think everything looks good, and I love the questions that you chose. But real quick, just kind of what are some things that are going on with you right now?
You know, we just moved into a beautiful new facility, man. Renovated facility, but it's new to us, really.
Yeah.
I mean, Moody Coliseum was a fixture on this campus, and you know, we've not been in it for the last 2 years, and so we've been playing in a tennis facility. You know, that they made into a basketball gym for us while they were renovating Moody Coliseum, and we just moved in 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's beautiful. I mean, back of house. This is I tell people, man, this is like a Power 5 facility, in my opinion.
Wow.
Like with the back of the house stuff. You know, the gym is the gym. It's beautiful, but it's got purple chairs now instead of red and black ones. But it's the film room, the team room, the locker room, the practice gym. You know, that we've never had. All of that is just first class, man. It just proves that ACU really is committed to making men's basketball work.
Yeah, definitely. When they put that type of time and resources into it, I mean, you know that they're thinking in the right direction, because it seems like all athletes need to do is just take a visit, just come come see it, and then they'll be wowed, just like you guys have been this whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun time. It's a great time to be at ACU for sure.
Love that. One of my I say favorite players. I mean, we all have favorites, but I feel like I have a lot of favorites over the years of Faith. But one of my former players, Grant Sully, is at ACU or graduated from, but he had nothing but awesome things to say about his experience there. And so you guys are definitely doing something right.
Good. Yeah, it's good to hear.
Yeah.
It's good to hear.
Well, I love getting to ask coaches who they listen to, who they follow, because there's probably a lot of coaches out there that you're that guy for them, and they're constantly following you on social media, looking to see what you're into. But who are you learning from? Who do you follow?
You know, I used to be a big Vince Lombardi guy, like, you know, back in the day, my early days, you know, but I've kind of changed over the years. Now there's still some great things. I still have a thing that's right here by my computer with a Vince Lombardi quote, but you know, that was kind of a win at all cost deal. And I've changed throughout my career, you know, that's not necessarily the case. And so as much respect as I have for Coach Lombardi, I still read his stuff and look at his stuff. I think obviously I follow, you know, the guys that I'm close with. You know, Chris Beard's, you know, personal friend of mine that he's done well. We communicate a lot. I follow all his stuff. Joe Golding, you know, my former boss here, I follow his stuff. I'm a big Greg Popovich guy. You know, I look into all his stuff, and kind of the outside the box one is I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago I was listening to a podcast. And I think Defining Mastery. I'm always leadership stuff, and I'm always searching for stuff like that. And they had an interview with a guy by the name of Jack Clark, who is the rugby coach at Cal Berkeley.
Oh.
And it's pretty amazing, man. And so I've been locked into that guy ever since I heard that podcast. If he's doing something, I try to listen to it. If he's written something, I try to read it. And it's not the dude, he's been doing this for 41 years. He's won 21 national titles. And the biggest thing is, I think, a guy that's done it for 41 years, has had to adjust, right? Like, so coaching players 41 years ago is not the same as coaching players today. And to have success over that long period of time, the dude's figured something out, right?
Yeah.
And he's learned how to adapt. And so that's kind of why that's somebody I admire. I've never spoken to the man in my life, never met him. I would love to someday. But just like I said, I just the other day I was actually on their website, just looking at their team stuff. You know what I mean? Kind of, it's a weird thing, but it's something. Winners win, and it doesn't. It crosses all sports.
That's right.
Leaders are leaders.
Does. Yeah.
And I try to read everything I can. And so if I can read something, then I read it. If it has something to do with culture, I'm going to read it.
I like that. I like what you said too about how winning is hard, and it's special when anybody wins at the highest level, a championship. Like, that's incredible. But to do it over different decades, to have sustained success, you got to look at that, because even in basketball, you look back over the 80s and 90s, some of those coaches that were winning at a high clip, it was almost like they hit a wall where kids and the times were changing, and maybe they chose not to. And so that's what makes, to me, Coach K so intriguing, is how over 4 decades, he was able to change with the times and coach differently and change his philosophy. One thing you said, you followed Vince Lombardi, but then the winning at all costs, over the years you've changed. Go into that a little bit of what made you change from that philosophy.
Honestly, I think just time. But working for Joe Golding, who's now at UTEP, really helped me with that. He's a close personal friend, and they, everybody told us and warned us not to work together, because we're friends. They thought it would hurt our friendship. And we had our tough times, of course, but I think he was a guy that allowed me to reconnect, with just understanding there's more to it, than just winning, And I think just spending the 8 years I did with him, I started to learn a lot. He wasn't even trying to teach me. It's just me watching him and how he built relationships and how he cared about the players and how it was more than just basketball, because we didn't win early. And it wasn't, and that was where I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I was coming from Stephen F. Austin where we had won championships and gone to the NCAA tournament. And I'm sitting here struggling because we're not winning. He was kind of somebody who helped me understand that, it's more about the process, than it is about just winning championships. And that's one of the things that Jack Clark talks about. He talks about it's, some guy, he says a goblet, but a trophy is not necessarily the end all, man. Yeah, it's great. We want to win it. But it's about the whole process of getting to that point that's more important.
Man, thank you for sharing that, because I do love getting to learn from leaders in different sports. And I think it's a great idea to venture outside. Excellence it translates. Right. It's not just about that one sport. You mentioned being friends with Coach. How was that working together? Any challenges? Because I'm assuming there's a lot of coaches out there that may have a really good friend on staff that you might be able to help out a little.
Yeah, we had our challenges like you would have with any boss, assistant coach, whatever. It helped. I think I give him the most credit for this because he never treated me like his assistant. He truly treated me like a head coach, and he didn't have to do that. And that helped probably me more than him. But I think the biggest thing was, we had to fight through those hard times, but we did a great job. And I don't know how we did it. I wish I could tell you how we did it, but of separating the office from our personal life. Our wives were friends. Our kids were friends. They still are, of course. And when we left the office, man, and we went and I sat on his back porch and we're having dinner, very rarely did we talk about the issues that we were having at work. We talked about, we would talk, not saying we never talked basketball, but it would be something completely different. If we had a problem, man, we left it at the door and we picked it back up, the next day when we showed up. And so I think that was probably the best thing that we ever did was we just somehow I wish I could say this is why we did it or how we did it, but we just found a way to just leave it. And I think that was because our friendship was deeper than our working relationship.
The Jamodi Podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
I would imagine, that philosophy that you guys had, to that choice that you made to leave work at the gym and just enjoy the time. That's probably what we need to do with our families when we get home. So that transitions really nice into another question of, how do you balance family and basketball, the passion that you have for it?
Well, it's helpful now because my oldest son is playing for us. That helps. I get to spend more time with him. I see him way more than my wife does, which upsets her. But I think, again, and not to keep pounding on this, but I think Coach Golding, helped me grow from that. But I think seeing how he coached his kids in Little League and he did all that, and my kids, I didn't do that, and I missed out on that. And so seeing that, I think that's one of the reasons he was able to handle, because some of the struggles we had early was because he had such a good life at home, and I had a good one too. But I can remember times when I was working elsewhere where I was gone all the time, and I wasn't seeing my kids grow up, and coming to Abilene Christian, just not just Joe Golding, but just Abilene Christian in general, really helped me kind of center myself a little bit and realize truly what's important. I mean, this is a place where kids are welcome. I mean, we got kids running around the office all day. We got, my assistants can bring their kids up here and hang out. I want my guys to go home for dinner, even if there's going to be days where we have to come back up here and work at night. But I want everybody to go home and have dinner with their families if they can. Kiss their kids goodnight. And if we got to come back up here, we got to come back up here. But I think that's the biggest thing. I think really when I came to Abilene Christian 10 years ago was when I was able to kind of reconnect, and that's sad to say, but reconnect with my family on a personal level and start to see how much, they actually helped me become a better coach, because I'm not pouring everything I have into this. And they're involved in it. I think that's one of the reasons why my son wanted to play here. And for me is because we have that connection now that we didn't used to have, if I'm being honest. And so I think just Abilene Christian has really helped me with that. But being around people like Joe, and then I have an unbelievable staff with beautiful families, all at different stages, and now getting to connect with their families and letting their kids run around up here. And we had one kid last year, Coach Trilly, one of my assistant coaches. His son tried to sit on the bench during the game, and we had the security trying to pull him back as we were in that tennis facility. We weren't in the Coliseum. I said, man, if he wants to sit down here, let him sit. Of course, Coach Trilly said, no. Let him go back with his mom. But honestly, that stuff, man, is super important. I think if you don't let your family be a part of what you're doing, man, then one of them's going to break. And usually it's the family. And unfortunately for all of us that are competitors and all that, and that's the last thing I ever wanted to happen, because my family is so important to me.
Some great reminders there, man. And I think it's special that 10 years ago you were able to see the path that you were on with your family, and you were able to make that change. And you obviously, like you said, you had other people around that helped you see it too. But I wonder how many coaches out there don't make that realization until it's too late, because we only have that certain amount of time with especially our kids when we're at home, and then also just remembering to cherish our wives that we have and not ever allow them to feel second to the game. And that's something that my wife and I have talked about a lot, is I never want her to feel like it's basketball and then her or the kids. So it sounds like you were able to see that early on and right on time.
I was. And one of the good things that I've tried to carry on that Coach Golding did, and I'd never had this when I was anywhere else, was, he always let me pick a couple of trips where I could bring my wife and my kids with us. And so I've tried to continue that. We just met on this the other day. I told the assistants, hey, man, go back to your families and figure out which one, of course, they can't travel at all. They all have different things going on too. But I think it's important for them to experience what we experience when we're gone, for a week or 2 weeks, and they can travel with us and see that. And I think that's something that he did that really connected with me, and that I've tried to continue since I've gotten the job.
I've had a lot of coaches say that have coached their own sons that it was a really special experience for them, that they loved it. But then I would imagine. Well, I'm going through it right now. Stepson's a sophomore at Faith, and he's playing, and I don't know what team or anything yet, but yeah, I don't want to put that out there just in case he hears this. But no, but and it's going well. But what advice do you have for coaches that do have their kids in their programs and are going to be spending time with them like on the floor?
So I called some good friends of mine when my son decided to come here. And in all honesty, he's not a Division I caliber athlete. He knew that. We had a long talk about that. He could have played small college like I did. He was good enough to do that, but he wanted to come be a part of this, and which meant a lot to me. And so I called some good friends of mine. One of them in particular was Kellen Sampson, who's a good friend of mine at the University of Houston, who played for his dad. I saw him very similar to Colby. Different times, different levels, and all that stuff. But and one of the things I said, what was some of the things that you and your dad did that separated that? And he told me, and not trying to get personal with it, and he put out his business, but he just said, I always called my dad coach. I made sure when I was there, he was coach, and when I was at home, he was dad. And then I don't even think he realized he said it to me, but his dad, he said his dad coached him hard, but he always felt like his dad was still dad, even when he was coaching him. And so I've tried to not, of course you have to separate the two, but I also want him to know that I am still his dad. It's like when he got hurt the other day, I'm still his dad.
Yeah.
I can't fake it. And so I'm not going to try to fake it and let somebody else go take care of him. He's still my kid. And I think that's tricky. I think you have to figure out how to do that. And I'm not sure I figured it out completely just yet. Yeah. I coach him just like I coach everybody else. And he does. He calls me coach. That's one of the things me and him talked about, but I still want him to know that when we're walking out of the gym, I can put my arm around him just like I would any of my other players, but he is my kid. And I'm not going to separate that. He can still be my kid even when he's out there on the floor.
I was just thinking about when you're talking coaches having to separate, who they are at home, how they are at the gym, or making sure that maybe there's going to be some obvious differences between the way that we coach and talk to our team and maybe the way that we relax at home. But I think that's maybe a challenge too. Like, should we have to change that much as a person? Like, if we are somebody completely different at the gym with a team, we're losing our cool, we're saying things that at home we wouldn't say. Maybe that's like a gut check moment. Like I would hope that, yeah, maybe some of our family jokes, family voices, some things that are just for us, we do keep at home. But then when I am coaching him here, there may be some times where the passion comes out, but at the end of the day too, it's like, yeah, it's the same person. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was trying to articulate, and I didn't do a very good job of it. But I think and that's kind of what he was saying to me, is that I think he never felt like his dad, which is probably why his dad's so good, but his dad never changed who he was at home with him to where he was at. Of course he's coaching him and he's doing some things that he wouldn't do at home, but he was never a different person.
Yeah, I think that's the nugget that I'm taking. Like, I have to make sure that the culture we have, the way I'm treating them, like, I should feel good about that, and I shouldn't feel like it's different than the way that I am. I think that's our coaches different outside of the gym that they are when they're inside. Now, I'm not talking about passion, volume, things like that, but gut check really for me. Like, I need to make sure that I'm the same person.
Yeah. I think that's basically what he was telling me, and I'm trying to make sure I'm doing that right now.
Well, because you played in college, and I had some experiences in college where, man, sometimes the guy that we saw, and I'm not talking about Coach Drew, just I don't want people to think that, but the guy that I saw was different. But then all of a sudden, like in front of the media or outside, that's another person, and that's hard. It's hard as a player to, one, we don't want them to be on their toes, whether they're our kid or not. We want them to feel comfortable with, coach will be coach every day, whether we played good or bad, won or lost. He's going to be consistent. But that was my experience quite often. And again, just a reminder, I think I'm more just telling myself it right now than anything else, that I need to make sure I'm being that guy.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've had an interesting experience being at ACU. for so long before becoming the head coach, even though you were associate head coach for 2 seasons
I was
or
associate coach, I
six
think,
six years.
for 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're an assistant coach first, associate head coach for a long time. Coach leaves, and you get the job. So obviously there was a culture already established that you were comfortable with and you're a part of. And man, you guys have had some incredible success. But now being the head coach, are the pillars the same? And if they are, what are the pillars in your program?
Yeah. So they're the same. There's something that we came up with together as a staff. We I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, we just sat down and we said, listen, man, we're building this program. Culture's important, but we've got to come up with some ideas of what are truly important. We can't hammer 20 different things, right? What's most important to us? And we came up with 4 pillars, and we hammered those home, and we still do to this day. And I think I'll carry them with me the rest of my coaching career. And they're these 4 things: it's communicate. It's build. We use the word consistently in front of them, so we consistently communicate. We consistently build real relationships. We consistently hold each other accountable, and we consistently compete. And so those 4 things, communicate, build relationships, hold each other accountable, and compete. And I think they have to go in that order. And this is the change that I made as a head coach. We used to just talk about those 4, and so they could come in any order, and we talked about them. But I started thinking about it, and I was actually talking with one of my other assistants that, and we kind of came up with this. They need to kind of go in order. I think the first thing you have to be able to do is communicate, and that's not just. Of course, we got to communicate on the floor, right? We talk about that, but it's off the floor.
Yeah.
We talk about, listen, man, you got to tell me when, if you got a serious test you got to study for, and I have practice schedule, and it's not going to work. You got to communicate that with me, and maybe I can make an adjustment, or you failed a test, man. Don't keep that to yourself. Communicate that, but just communicate. But I don't think, and then the second is build real relationships. And I don't think you can, if you don't communicate, you can't have relationships. So that's why communicate has to come first. And then we want to build real relationships, and we do those things in a lot of different ways, which I could talk about for days probably. But that's really, really super important to me and to our program. Is we want to have real. I think if you watch us play, people, culture has kind of become a buzzword.
Yeah.
And so we use, but it's real. And so we use the word connected. We're connected, and you can't be connected if you don't have real relationships with people. And then the third one was hold each other accountable. Well, if you don't communicate, you don't have real relationships, you really can't hold each other accountable, right? And so I allow the players to hold me accountable. And we make commitments every year before the season, and we hold each other accountable to those commitments. We're not going to be perfect. It's not a sacrifice. We used to do a sacrifice, but sacrifice means you're truly going to give something up no matter what.
Hold on. What do you mean you did a sacrifice?
We sacrificed something in our life, but I changed it when I got the job to commitment. So we're allowed to fail, but it's a commitment, and we can hold each other accountable to that. But they can hold me accountable to something, and I have to, as a leader, have to be willing to allow that to happen if I'm going to really have real relationships with them. So I'm holding them accountable every day. And if I come in and I'm in a bad mood and I'm taking that out on the team, they're allowed to come up to me and say, Coach, man, you need to check yourself. And they've done that plenty of times. My commitment last year was to do better with my demeanor and my language and things of that nature, that I've been trying to work on. And they can come up to me, and it took them a while to trust that, but they can come up to me in the middle of a practice and say, Coach, man, you're kind of crazy today. You know what I mean? Check yourself. And so you got to allow them to do that, And then the last thing is compete. That's what we're here for, right? But I don't think you can compete, if you don't hold each other accountable and you don't have real relationships and you don't communicate. So, and compete is everywhere, not just on the court, but we got to compete in the classroom. When we have dinner at my house, man, who's going to be the last one in my house? We don't want anybody speeding and getting hurt or getting in trouble. But let's leave early enough that I'm not the last one to get there. Let's compete. Every time we do come to my house or we go to an assistant's house, we have something there where we compete. We want to compete. We want to consistently be competing with each other. And then, we have a GPA competition. We have groups, academic groups. Well, the highest GPA, we're competing all semester to see which group is going to have the highest cumulative GPA, so we're going to compete everywhere. And those 4 things, I think, cover all of it. I couldn't think of anything better than those 4 pillars.
And there's a lot to unpack there. I do really like the flow that they have. And that's something maybe a takeaway from, like, I think every coach has, you're right, culture, buzzword. I almost feel like sometimes in those questions changing that, like, how do you show up every day? Who are you going to be? Like that's, that, and because culture's been around for a long time, we just now named it, that
Yeah.
word. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
who are you? How are we going to show up every day? What do we believe in? I like the flow of that. So I wonder how many coaches have a culture. Maybe it's an acronym. I do like things to kind of flow like that, put on a t-shirt, all that. That's good. But what if there is a better order that they could have that makes sense, that maybe even makes it more applicable? Because your culture really is. You start with that communication, fellas. This is important. When I text you within 24 hours, you've got to respond, because you start there. Then the relationship maybe isn't fractured. It has a really good flow to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about it. We hammer them home all the time. The new guys have to know them quickly, and then, like I said, we talk about them in our groups. You know what I mean? We have what we call leadership groups once a week, and that's a time where kind of getting off the subject here, but it goes with this. We used to do where we had leadership groups. Like one was pride in the program. We had names for each group, and I've gotten away from that. We just have groups, and it's where I step away. An assistant coach has a certain amount of players for a few weeks, and then we switch them and we mix them up, and we and they just talk about life, non-basketball. But we also talk about these pillars right before each meeting, and how let's use these pillars in this meeting. Let's communicate. Number one, let's hold each other accountable if we need to. You know what I mean? Or let's work on our relationships. Let's hold each other accountable if we need to. And I think that has been a game changer for us since we started doing those leadership. We call them leadership groups. I don't know why, but it's really more just getting to know each other, just pouring into each other, and mental health is such a big thing today. And a lot of those meetings kind of turn into that some now, and just checking each other and making sure we're okay. And again, that's the stuff I would have never done, 24 years ago when I started coaching. And I think it's so important to what we do now. And it falls in line with those pillars, I think.
The third one, holding each other accountable. I think since team sport began and coaches were in control, we've been holding players accountable. I don't think that's different. That's not new. But what's unique is now the ability of players to hold us accountable. I think it's a good thing. I think it's positive, and I think it'll make relationships better, like you said. But what have you seen as the big change in that dynamic of players actually having that ability to say, Coach, listen, here's our pillars, and hold us accountable?
Yeah. What you see is the new guys never do it early, right? until they witness some of the older guys in the program doing it. And you have to have some understanding, of course. And we talk about that when we, in our early meetings in the year, like, they can't come up to me right in the middle of a rampage and they got to wait, let me cool off to come to me.
Good idea.
I had to work on it, and if I'm going to allow these guys to do that, then I have to allow them to do it. They have to be able to check me, and then they're going to say some things that I don't like. And it's not just on the court. There's been players over the last couple of years before I was even a head coach and as an assistant, but even last year, I've gotten phone calls at night. I've had guys walk into my office and shut the door and say, Coach, we need to talk, man. This is something that you said we were going to do, and we haven't done it. Or this is something that you say is important, and I don't know if you're actually upholding that standard. And that has made me such a better coach. You know what I mean? And so it's become easy, but it was really scary for me at first, because I thought, what are these guys? Am I going to really allow it? Or am I going to like what they're telling me? And we were in the middle of a 5-game losing streak last year. We had a crazy year last year. We won 11 straight, lost in double overtime at A&M, and had some amazing games. And then we just couldn't win. And I was checked on a couple things by 2 of our players that I think helped get us out of that losing streak. And nothing major, little things, but how we were practicing, how I was acting, the things that I was saying in film. And I immediately changed, and I met with the team, and we go on and we don't lose again. We do. We lose on a last-second shot at SFA and a last-second shot at Sam Houston, and we didn't lose again until the conference tournament championship game. We end up with 25 wins, and if those guys don't ever do that, we may never win another game, And instead we go and we win I think it was 12 out of 14 to finish the year. And it's all because I believe those guys came in and held me accountable to a few things and made me a better coach.
That's a special story. One, the fact that the players did it, it speaks to the relationship that you've built with them, that they felt they had the ability. They felt that there was enough trust in between you that they could do that. But then another side of that is the fact that, one, you let them, you listened, and you're open enough to actually make the change. Coach, I don't know. I don't know if that's common. I think a lot of us, it sounds nice at the beginning of your guys. Listen, if you have anything that you want to bring up to me, one-on-one, my door is open. I think we've all said that. But when it actually happens, are we open enough, humble enough to take it and make a change? That's incredible.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think it's been a growth for me. It wasn't as easy right off the bat, and I think it goes back to those relationships, man. It's all about having real relationships. And I was a head coach at a very young age, and I wasn't very good at it. And it was because everything was win, 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 and it wasn't about if a guy couldn't help me win. Okay, you're not as important to me as the guys that can help me win. And that is where I've evolved as a coach, I think, and understood how important the relationship piece is and how much better my quality of life is because of those relationships that I have with those guys. And if you don't have the relationship piece, you can't do it, and so I think that's the biggest part.
My high school coach was Tommy Thomas at the Colony High School, and is still one of my mentors to this day. And when I started coaching, I was probably a lot like you, resulting. It was all about we have to win, legacy, all of these things that when you're young, you really care about. And then you get to, I don't know what it is, about around 40, you're like, it just doesn't matter. Maybe you see some of those older coaches that you used to emulate that 2 years after they retired, it's like, were they even, did the wins matter? Did anything? Obviously the relationships mattered that they had. But one thing Coach Thomas said to me, he said, if I could do it over again, I would go back and have better relationships with 10, 11, 12, 13, the end of the bench, because you're right. We do focus so many times on the dudes that are on the floor more. We get to know them better. We're naturally having conversations with them more. But I would imagine with your culture that you've set up with communication and all of those, that you are getting to know those players that don't necessarily translate to on the court winning night after night. Yeah.
And, it is important. And I think, and that goes back to, like you said, that's what I would do differently, 23 years ago, 24 years ago, is that I would make sure that I was invested in the men that are, out there playing for me and not just winning and losing games. And it was about me, back then. And I've changed so much, and again, I've had great people in my life through that course that have helped me along that way, that have helped that grow, guys like Chris Beard, who, because he's at the stage he's at, you love him, you hate him, whatever. But like, he's been so good to me and helping me understand, the relationship with players. And then Joe Golding, but even before him, Steve Green at South Plains College is probably one of the most impactful people that I've ever had in my life. And it was just, we were great JUCO, South Plains College, but it was just me and him. We didn't have other assistants and other people around. And the relationship that I saw him build, and he coached those guys so hard, man. And that they would go into his office before they would come to mine, and I witnessed that firsthand, and it's just helped me evolve into a coach, and it's helped me, I think, in my personal life with people as well, not just my coaching career, just valuing people more.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. So we have kind of moved into that question that I plan on going to, which is, what would you do differently? We both, again, you and I are similar in the fact that how we started, and we look back at that young coach now, and we see the error in the way that we were thinking, the way that we were communicating with our players. But my question, Coach, is I would think a majority of coaches out there maybe just because of the time, look back and the relationship piece with players is what they wish they could enhance. How do younger coaches get that at the right time?
Yeah, it's hard because when you're young, you want to skyrocket to the profession, right? And you want to coach the highest level and do all that. And I feel like I was 45, I think, when I was 45 years old when I got this job, and that's pretty young nowadays. But I felt like I was, and I still feel like I'm super old. But you can't compare yourself to other people, and I think we have to do a better job now as older coaches, mentoring the younger guys and letting them know. I can't have a staff meeting because I have 3 guys that work for me that I have no doubt are going to be great head coaches one day. And I can't sit here and preach to them it's all about winning and it's about this. I have to teach them, just as I had some guys teach me later in my career, that it is about the relationship piece. It is more about the kid, the individual. And if they watch me and they see me live that out, then hopefully they'll pick up on that. If we have success, like we've been fortunate enough to have, and they'll carry that into their head coaching career. And I think we just have to. When I was coming up, when I was playing, and when I first started coaching, things were different, right? It was about, like we were just talking today about, I was taught to hold my emotions in, like it was a good thing to bottle everything up. Well, we've learned now that's the worst thing you can do, right? Well, it's the same thing with coaching, man. It's what I talk about with Vince Lombardi, who I, still I respect gratefully, but like I've moved on from that way of thinking because that was the way I was taught to do it, or thought I was supposed to do it. And I've learned over the course of time that that's not the way. And I think I could have been a lot more successful a lot earlier in my career if guys that are in the shoes that me and you are in now, you would have done a better job, mentoring us in that regard. And so I think it's up to us to help those young guys do that.
Yeah, what a great point. Mano Watsa, president of PGC, says more is caught than taught. So if we want our players to learn the cultures that we've set up, if we want our assistant coaches, younger assistant coaches, to grow and do better than we did back in the day, then we need to make sure that we are showing them with our actions, with the way we talk with them. And because if we're just saying words about, hey, make sure it's about relationships, but then your life doesn't show that in any way, I think then we let them down in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So relationships, going back and having more emphasis on those. Anything else that you would, if you knowing what you know now, if you could transport back in time, you're starting out, any other things that you would like to do differently?
It is a good question. Obviously, that's the biggest thing. Is it's not about winning and losing. It is. Of course, that's how we keep our jobs, right? I don't have this job if we don't win.
Right.
But I think I've learned over time that if you do the things that we've talked about, throughout this process, you will win. And so, yes, of course, that's number one, the relationship piece. But I think it would come back to the family piece. I can remember vividly, man, 22 years ago, I spent the night at the office after we lost the game. And I had my son that's playing for me now, or whatever, he was just born. He was a newborn. My wife was at home, and I never went home. And it was because we had lost the game. And it crushes me even to talk about it, but I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I literally woke up, or I didn't wake up. I never slept, but I remember our administrative assistant, secretary back then, walking by, and I'm like, "What are you doing here this late?" And she said, "What are you doing here this early?" And I had no idea that the night had passed. I wasn't doing anything. There was no cell phones really back then. They were the Nokia with the antenna, And so, I don't know what I was doing. It was too much, and I don't live it like that anymore, man. And I've had so much more success, and I'm so much happier not being that way. And I think just not overthinking it all, man. It always comes down to that.
Thank you for sharing that, because that is powerful to hear. And a lot of those coaches that do have young families, and man, what a great reminder to get home, and win at that job. Coach Peeler at Highland Park says you got to win at the job that only you can do, like only you can do. So that's a really good reminder. What you said about early on, what coaches think will lead to winning is better X's and O's, better practice plans, better plays, more emphasis on film. And what gets in the way or what gets left behind is the relationships, the standards. But then you've noticed, and I feel like I've gotten there too, where it's flipped. It's Ted Lasso. Like
Yeah.
he goes in and it's not about winning. It's
Mm-hmm.
about everything else, but then that's the byproduct of it. So how did you get to that realization?
Well, I watched Ted Lasso, number one. I got the believe sign over here behind me. If I can lower this, man, it's over that's that little yellow piece back
Oh
over there.
yeah, I
That's
see.
believe.
And it's crooked. I love
I did it
that.
right, man. But
That's right.
I really do. I think it's the people. God bless me, man, and he put good people in my life, and so I wish I could say I just did it. But and the most important person to me, and I don't tell him enough. I'd probably tell he would say I tell him too much. I don't think I tell him enough. Is Joe Golding. He really helped me change my course of life. But it's all of them. It's all the guys I've worked for. It's not the guys I've worked for. It's the guys I've worked with. I've been blessed to work with some unbelievable assistant coaches that kind of helped me along the way grow. I mentioned Kellen Sampson earlier, who's the associate head coach at Houston. Eric Malagy, who's the associate head coach at Kansas State, working for Jerome Tang. And guys like that I've in Cinco Boone, who is a great friend of mine who's now at UTA. But there's so many people at Talbot Hester. I can keep going on and on.
Yeah.
These are all quality people, not just great basketball coaches.
Yeah.
And they've, like I said, God bless me, man. He put all these people in my life when I really needed them, and they've helped me kind of mature and grow. Most of them are way younger than me, but they still helped me, And then I got to the point where I was working for Joe Golding and just putting him at the time in my life where I needed somebody like that. That's how I got there. It was just the people in my life. And then, again, Abilene Christian deserves a lot of credit for what I'm dealing with or my growth. And that's that, I came to a place that, I mean, how many coaching staffs get, they go through the Division I transition and then they lose their job. And they gave us the chance to do this thing right. They wanted us to do it right. They didn't want us to try to make a quick fix. And we didn't know if we believed them at first, and we got a little nervous because we won like 8 games, then we won 12, then we won 15. We did it right. We barely won a little bit more each year. But we got there, and the next thing you know, we're winning 27 games. We're in the NCAA tournament, Then we're back there again, and we're beating the University of Texas,
Yeah, you did. As a Baylor grad, I loved it. I loved watching that.
People in the state of Texas, they either love us or they hate us because of that game.
Fair.
But it's just, like I said, I'm kind of getting off topic.
No, you're good.
Abilene Christian was a big part of that. This is an unbelievable institution with great people. Obviously it's a Christian university, and that's a big part for me, but it's not just that. I mean, there's really good people here that care about us as people, and they expect us to win. My president reminds me every time, we are, you're supposed to run the race to win, right? But
they keep score. That's
score. Right. Keep score for a reason. But at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice our principles. And they gave us time, man, and that showed me, man, that you can do it right.
I love getting to hear about the path that God put you on and the people he put in your life, because there's no accident. There's no accident to people that come in our lives. And if you don't mind, I'll just like a 1-minute path, because I have a few people I'd like to thank in case they do hear, because as a 24-year-old, I mean, after leaving college, my life was a mess. In basketball, I kind of knew what I was doing, but personally just a wreck. And my life looked like that. And Jeff Clarkson hired me at Naaman Forest as a varsity assistant because my high school coach told him he needed to. And that year, it wasn't all perfect, but having that type of person, if you know Clarkson and everybody, the character that he has, the family man that he is, I got to see that even through my crazy times. His assistant, Cole Johnson, who's at Legacy Christian Academy now, was another one. I mean, night after night, staying at his house, talking with him and his wife about, there's ways I was screwing up, but they loved me through all that. And then to go to Wes Watson at McKinney High School, where, I mean, a guy he gave me so much grace while I was still failing miserably in life. And then all of that together, where God put my wife in my life, led me to Grapevine Faith, where just like you, the way ACU has shaped you and your coaching, faith has completely changed me, because it's not about winning here. It is way more about developing, mentoring, discipling these young men that God's put in my life. But I think if I was at someplace else, that drive inside of me that I kind of have to, keep down, the me monster would take over again. And so I loved hearing your story. And I don't know if those people will hear that, but thankful for the people in our lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the faith piece is important to me too. Nothing happens by accident, and I have no doubt God put me at Abilene Christian at that time in my life, which I thought was a negative when I came here. Because, I'd been somewhere for a long time. We were successful. A guy left and I thought I had a chance to get this job and I didn't. Right. And God put me here because I wasn't ready. And he allowed me to stay here until I was. And he put all those people that I've gotten to know here in my life that to help me. I've grown so much. I've always been a Christian, but my faith has grown so much over the last 10 years just because I've been able to see it, and I know that God doesn't make mistakes, man. He put me here for a reason.
You're right on the money. One of the worst things that can happen to people is that they are elevated to a position where their character won't sustain them. It won't work. And that's where I think you see sometimes is overnight, not really overnight success, because we know that does take a lot of work, but people that do move up the ladder quickly, if they're not prepared, they fail quickly. And so sometimes we might think as coaches, like, when is my shot going to come? Like, what? I think those are great moments to make sure, self-reflect, look and see, is there an area of my life that is holding me back? I've been at Faith now 10 years, and I tell them all the time, 11, 12 years ago, I could not coach here. I could have maybe lied for a few weeks or months, but I would have been found out real quick. And so that you're right. Those doors are shut on purpose because our character and our lifestyles, he won't allow us to go through those. And so great reminder right there. Before we move to the speed round, which I'll get to know you even better from that, favorite culture building activity that you like to do with the team? Because you made a comment that we could talk a whole long time about the way that you make sure those standards or pillars are alive. What's your favorite or a few favorites?
Yeah, so obviously we do a team retreat like a lot of teams do, and that's different every year. I think the biggest thing the best thing that we've ever done for a retreat is we always come up with some sort of video, that includes the players or the players' families. Some guys are from across the pond, man. They're not even from here, and getting to see families' faces and things like that, I think is really important, and others seeing how much that means to those people, but I won't go too deep into that because it's something that we do personally, but I think that's one of them. I think all the stuff we do on the retreat, every year it's different. And like last year, obviously it was pretty Ted Lasso heavy, but we're getting ready to go on one here in a couple of weeks. But I think, I really do think the leadership groups that we've done is probably the best thing that I mentioned earlier. And we do so much, obviously, to build relationships and to do things, but those leadership groups have grown. When we first started them, and I think that's where the leadership name came from. It's not really leadership groups anymore. It's more like relationship groups, which I might actually have just now changed the name. We might start calling them relationship groups.
On the Jamodi podcast, name change. Let's go.
No doubt. But, it was like we had one group, like mine was pride of the program. And all we talked about was like, cleaning up the locker room and doing this stuff. And we had a community service group that was kind of, for that month, they worked on our community service for our program. Each one had a theme, right? And then when I got the job, we kind of changed it and not for any reason other than just to be different. And it was probably the best thing we ever did because, man, we have gotten into some deep, and I just bounce around from group to group. The assistant coaches lead them. They talk about their own personal issues in their life, struggles that they've gone through, and the guys are allowed to chime in and help. But they're also allowed to bring something to the table and spark a conversation. And just we don't go into any of those meetings with a thought process like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. We just do it. And I like separating them with each. It gives the assistant coaches like some leaders, some leadership, I guess, some accountability to that group. But and they don't feel like I'm hovering or I'm telling them what to talk about. It happens organically. And like I said, I just pop my head in and I'll listen. And the one I sat in the other day, I stayed in there the whole time because it was really gripping, you know what I mean? And it got me. And so sometimes I'll pop my head in on a couple. We only do it for 30 minutes, but sometimes it stretches into an hour. And it's kind of it's like our personal chapel, you know what I mean? And we're able to spend some time with each other. And I've seen so much growth in if we want to use the word culture through those groups, you know what I mean? And I think that's the best thing that we do. But our retreat is really important too. The things we do, and we do all the fun stuff that everybody does, the hot seat questions and things like that. But those leadership groups are once a week, and they're not just. I think so many of us get caught up in doing a retreat at the beginning of the year, and then it's put aside when it's done, and we never go back to it.
Check, got our culture done. That's right. Now to the important things.
That's right, and I think these groups doing them once a week, and we don't do them in the second semester usually. Now it's because everything's moving so fast, but we stay consistent no matter what. All first semester, and they get a chance. Like I said, after 3 weeks, we mix them up, and you might be with the same coach that you were with, but you have different people in your room. There's no rhyme or reason. We just throw them in a bag and say, let's go.
You know what I'm amazed with? The more I get to talk, I love talking with high school coaches, but I feel like sometimes high school coaches, we really do focus on X's and O's a ton, and there's some incredible X's and O's or culture guys out there in the high school world, but I've been blown away by guys at your level, and just like you've been talking about all this whole time, how intentional you are on building those relationships. It's refreshing to know that, like, it's not just something that that you tell the parents. Yeah, we're going to build relationships with your kid, and then you get them in the door. All right, I don't care. Let's like, it's really cool to see, because and I hope parents or players or high school coaches that listen to this just to see. In my opinion, you guys are the best of the best. You're there for a reason, and the relationships with the players and being intentional with that time, it's important to you. So it has to be important to us.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I think I really do believe this. I think the best coaches out there are high school coaches. Man, I really do. And especially, but I think it's a little easier for us because we have more time with the kids, right? We can literally have them all day long. Where at high school it's a little tougher because the kids are going. I mean, our guys are going to class too, but it's a different schedule. We all know college is different, and so we're very fortunate we get more time, so it's a little bit easier. It's not easy, but it's easier. But man, and I think if you guys can do that at your level, it takes a lot of work, but man, it's so worth it. It's so worth it, and I think everybody would benefit from it.
I think we have to be a little bit more creative with the times. And then also, like you said, the intentional with maybe I take a little defensive shell out so that at the end.
Not defensive shell, man. Do something else.
No, that for me, that's the first thing to go. Yeah. And I might have just lost half of the listeners. He doesn't believe in shell, but no, but take some time out of something to really make sure the main thing stays the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. What's your BSA score? The Ballogy Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Ballogy mobile app. Elevate your game. Coach, the speed round. I mean, so many people on your campus, they think they know who you are, but after the speed round, they really will. Quick questions, first thing that pops in your head. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate.
How many hours of sleep do you need?
I need 8. I get about 6.
That's fair. Best basketball movie of all time?
Oh, man, Hoosiers. Has to be.
It's like 99% right now.
Yeah,
like,
it has to be.
the only one I heard was Finding Forrester with Sean Connery, but I think it was more because of the other things in the movie, because in my opinion, the basketball wasn't great. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
I would have told you 20 years ago, no shot clock. Today, I got to go shot clock.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate that. Texting or talking?
Man, that's changed too. I'm a talker, though.
Favorite
I'm growing on the texting.
Yeah. Favorite holiday?
Well, it's got to be 4th of July, right? I'm a college basketball coach. So I mean, we don't get any other holidays.
It's the basketball coach holiday. That's
right.
it. Yeah. You'd be surprised how many coaches have said that. Like it's funny. I didn't think about it. I think before the speed round started happening. In basketball, who's the GOAT?
Michael Jordan.
No,
MJ.
Yeah, and I
fight with my guys all the time, man.
For those listening, he gave me a look like, "What are you, stupid?" Like, and I appreciate that. Favorite city in the U.S. besides the one you live in?
It would have to be Rose Hill, Kansas, which is where I grew up, and I still have a lot of friends. My mother still lives there, and I got a lot of really good people there. I go back all the time.
That's awesome. If you could travel back in time, what period would you visit?
Man, that's a great question. I think that's hard. I love history. I would want to go back to the Roaring '20s, man, and nice. I think that would be it.
Yeah. Two more. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
I'm glad to say this. One, I was almost an 8 cup guy 2 years ago. 8 cups a day.
Coach, why'd you cut back?
I just felt like I needed to do something. I was a little high strung, so I slowly worked my way down to 1 cup a day. But I don't think you're ever going to get rid of that.
Now, like a cup or a cup? Like how
big
is that cup?
Do the right thing, and I get the small one, but then I go back and keep getting more and more and more. So yeah. I'm down to 1 small one a day.
There you go. Last one: Godfather, Star Wars, or neither?
Star Wars. Nice. Absolutely. I'm a Star Wars nerd. I'm a proud Star Wars nerd.
Thank you. Like I'm always, I have to listen to these people that say Godfather, like that's what they're supposed to say as a coach. Yeah. And now let me ask you, as also a Star Wars nerd, are you just 4, 5, and 6, or do you appreciate the entire canon and everything that they've done?
That is a good question. I mean, obviously I lean towards 4, 5, 6, but I appreciate the whole thing. And I think because my younger son is a Star Wars nerd with me. He kind of grew into it, where my older one didn't really pick it up. So it's been something that me and him have been able to kind of connect on. And I even took him to when we were in Wichita 6, 7 years ago. I actually took him to a Star Wars museum that was kind of a traveling deal, and we had a blast, man. So I'm a real nerd.
Did you dress up at it?
So, I will not dress up. I won't be that person. But just because I'm afraid it'll show up on social media.
That's fair. Yeah. Oh, Coach, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing, being really transparent with some of the struggles that you've had with coaching, but the way that you are running the program at ACU, it just seems like you've got something really special going on there. So thank you so much for your time.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on and working with me on some of the time differences. But this has been fun, man, and I love to talk. I really love to talk culture. I'll talk hoops and culture any day.
If coaches had heard something you liked and really liked it, what's a great way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so my email is not on the website, but they can always reach out to anybody on my staff. And we're all in Texas. A lot of us are in Texas, man. You'll find a way to get a hold of me, man. But I'm a guy that's willing to talk. Like I said, I will talk to anybody, man. And just if you can find my email, man, email me. But if not, Coach Crass is on my staff. Ted Crass, he's on there, and he can easily get a hold of me.
Awesome. Coach, thank you so much, man.
You got it. Appreciate you.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.